FNaF Security Breach is the latest installment in the FNaF franchise. This game has been hyped up for over 2 years since the days of FNaF Help Wanted, but despite all the hype and fanfare about this game, I believe, aside from special delivery, that it is currently the weakest game addition to the FNaF franchise. However, I still believe that it is a good game, and in this video I will explain its many flaws, some of the things it does well, and some ways to fix its big issues. Chapter 1. The Atmosphere. Atmosphere is important to a good suspenseful game. However, from my experience, Security Breach has a strange, compromised type of atmosphere to it. In my playthrough, it felt as if the Pizzaplex itself didn't feel like it was closed down for the night. Most of the lights were still on, and the theming for the attraction still had music and audio playing. In this sense, the building just felt like it was empty of people, but still running almost as if it was the middle of the day. This is a problem because it messes with the idea of having a creepy atmosphere. I mean, imagine if FNaF 1's pizzeria was completely lit up with positive music playing as if there was a party going on. It would clash with what the original game was going for and pulled off so well, which was tension. FNaF 2 was lit up more than FNaF 1, but it managed to retain the creepy and closed atmosphere. FNaF 1, 2, 3, 4, Sister Location, FFPS, UCN, Help Wanted, and Curse of Dreadbear all managed to nail or have an internally consistent atmosphere that complemented the tension that the games are going for. Now, despite this, to me, parts of the Pizzaplex also feel a bit dead. There are plenty of great set pieces and environments, but there's very little in the way of interactivity in, say, Bommy Bowl, L Chips, the Fastcade, and so on. This results in those areas feeling very static, and while they are pretty to look at, you can't do anything with them. You can't sit down, you can't order a drink or any food for Gregory, you can't bowl, and to my knowledge, you can't play on any of the arcade cabinets except for Princess Quest. I might be wrong on that though, so please correct me. And you also can't go on most of the rides. Originally, I thought you couldn't play golf too, because I never ended up figuring out how to do so in my playthrough, but to the game's credit, apparently it does allow you to play Monty's Golf, so that's great. And fortunately, you are able to play Phaser Blast. You get a cutscene on Roxy Raceway, and you do get a very cool sequence in the Fastcade with DJ Music Man. However, this basically means that about half of the Pizzaplex is just a set piece to gaze upon. A very pretty set piece, but not one that I believe is interactive enough. If you've ever been to a location like the Pizzaplex when the rides close down, you know how interesting the atmosphere can actually be. I used to work at a family-owned amusement park, and at the end of the night, the arcade and its lights would be turned off. I remember times when I was walking through the laser tag arena there, with the dimly lit floor and the backlights on the ceiling, as well as the fog. The atmosphere in those places is something else. One last thing about this game's atmosphere that irks me is the music. Usually when you are traveling between places in a horror game, it's supposed to be tense and suspenseful, but when you're riding in the elevators in the Pizzaplex, you hear this. In my opinion, this takes away all of the scary atmosphere that might have built up to this moment. It's a positive jingle, and it sounds nice, but I don't believe it has a place in this part of the game. It only relieves tension and doesn't build up any suspense. The same could be said for all of the other positive jingles and themes played throughout the Pizzaplex. Though, maybe, the daycare deserves a pass on this. I think that one works. To me, Security Breach fails to capture that closed for the night eeriness that was present in the first two FNaF games, and was basically part of a core reason why FNaF 1 succeeded so much in creating a tense and scary game. Ultimately, Security Breach needed to choose one or the other. Either choose a creepy and eerie mall closed down for the night that's supposed to be fun during the day but feels uncanny in the night, or go all out on making it a fun and exciting time for the player with plenty of stuff to play and interact with, other than just collectibles. Security Breach did not commit to either one, and therefore the atmosphere is not consistent and it clashes with itself, in my perspective. Chapter 2. Benny's presence as an antagonist. In my opinion, I do not believe Vanny's presence in this game was sufficient enough for her character. I don't believe she had enough scripted events. Apparently there's a removed feature in the game that would cause Vanny to spawn more often, but even if the feature was put in, Vanny could still be evaded and looped with relative ease in a decent amount of time. What I'm really getting at is that she doesn't have as much of a foreboding and ominous presence in the game as she should, despite her being one of the central antagonists. One way to fix this is to have Vanny always catch up to and harm Gregory when she appears, but Gregory can escape. Some of these encounters could be unavoidable scripted events, whereas others could be optional due to the player's actions. This would reinforce the idea that she is dangerous to the player. She could slice into his arm, leg, or what have you, resulting in Gregory needing to actually use the first aid stations that are around the map. This could even result in Gregory losing some of his stamina the more often he gets caught, incentivizing better playstyles. She could even pose a threat to Freddy and the other animatronics as well, perhaps occasionally harming him, resulting in you having to make repairs on him. To me, Vanny feels more passive in this game than I think she should. Chapter 3. Afton's appearance is not explained. Yep, we're diving right into one of the spoiler-heavy topics of this game. Or not. I feel like everyone and their brother could see that Springtrap, Afton, Scrabtrap, Burnttrap, Glitchtrap, Bill was going to return in some form because of the trailers. But still, both him and Molten Funtime, Freddy, managed to survive the FFPS fire, or something like that. The way they did it wasn't explained though, and the fire still harms or stops him in the canon finale, which is very odd if it wasn't enough to kill him the first time. He also gets quote-unquote dealt with shortly after his appearance. To me, it just feels like they brought him back just to take him away again. And why bring him back in the first place? If you're going to bring back a character like Afton, wouldn't it be better to add something new to his character dynamic? To do something with him? To add to his story? It seems like Afton's shtick of, "I always come back," is used as the only reason for him quote-unquote dying, and then finding out that he didn't actually die. If you're going to bring him back, please don't pretend to kill him off again, just to bring him back again later. Commit to him being alive, or just leave him dead. Chapter 4. UI issues and unclear progression. This chapter deals with one of the biggest gameplay issues in Security Breach. I had so much trouble trying to progress in this game on my first playthrough, because I just simply did not know where to go and what objects I could interact with from afar. In the game, you only get a prompt to interact with an object when you're right up close to it. This presents a problem, because you can waste a lot of time trying to find out if you can interact with something, because there's no difference in appearance between the different types of objects. Eventually, you have the choice of upgrading Freddy's vision with Roxy's eyes, which allows you to see interactable objects in a shaded color when inside Freddy, but that is optional. Other games with interactable objects and collectibles, such as Until Dawn and Detroit Become Human, have markers on the screen informing you of an objective or thing you can interact with. Security Breach does not have this, and it makes missing stuff incredibly easy. One such frustrating example is if you go into the loading docks first. You eventually have to avoid Chica, and you then find some rooms with cleaner bots in them. I spent about 2 hours trying to find out where to go, weaving around the bots to avoid getting spotted. It turns out there's a door-sized gap in one of the rooms that is very easy to miss amidst the anxiety of trying to avoid each threat. If this gap was marked on the screen in some way, it could save hours of time trying to progress. This isn't the only instance where this kind of problem occurs. The game has plenty of areas you need to go that aren't marked on the screen or the map you are given, leading a lot of players into confusion and disorientation. In the game, you have to survive to 6 AM like Until Dawn, and then there's the whole probably sentient Freddy thing, like Detroit Become Human. In Become Human, there are yellow squares on the screen for interactions, and Until Dawn contains small dots of light that get brighter as you get closer to an interactable. I don't see a reason why Security Breach shouldn't have a feature like one of those. The next issue is that the FAS map isn't very helpful with navigation. No locations are labeled, and neither are any paths shown that might lead you to a desired location. In one section of the game, you have to solve a very difficult maze puzzle, the controls for which are complicated for a first-time player and aren't explained at all. Because you aren't able to see the changes in the maze in real time, it makes figuring out what is even happening a very difficult or time-consuming task. Even the hint you get, which I don't think I found, is apparently incorrect. The maze itself is basically like a 2D Rubik's Cube, allowing you to move squares containing differently oriented walls from one spot to another, which, in my opinion, is not intuitive. When I first got to this point in the game, I thought the walls of the maze would swivel around their joints, not translate from one spot in the maze to another. This made figuring out the controls even more difficult, and ultimately I had to find a guide online and gave up trying to find out how to do it on my own. This is probably the worst example of game design in this game, as it confuses the first-time player with complicated controls for a non-intuitive system with a lack of explanation. The game basically doesn't hold your hand enough. If you don't know what you're doing, or if you don't fully register or interpret instructions correctly, like a first-time player, you can get very lost and confused. Chapter 5. A very weak scare factor, at least for me. Honestly, this point can be pretty subjective, but I will try to illuminate my reasons for why I wasn't really scared when I played Security Breach. For the core 3 animatronics chasing you, Chica, Roxy, and Monty, I felt they were too predictable as threats. In the game, their base state is patrolling a certain area in a certain loop, like the staff bots. If they catch you, they chase you, but if you evade them, they just go back to where they were, doing the same old pattern. This is the problem. I am not under constant fear of encountering the animatronics if I know where they are at all times, and they have such predictable behavior. The part of the game that actually kind of got me was this. Oh gosh. I'm not quite sure why it was done this way, but this is the only FNaF that I've played where I didn't really get scared at all. FNaF 1, 2, and 3 all had their fair share of jumps for me. I still haven't played FNaF 4 to this day because of the sound mechanic being too much for me to handle. Sister Location had some good jumps, and I couldn't keep on playing FFPS because it was too much for me, but this game, for some reason, wasn't scary at all to me. This is of course subjective, as there are plenty of people who did find it scary, but if I were to pinpoint why I didn't, the reason would link back to the compromised atmosphere and predictability of threats. For the staff bots, they are really more of an annoyance than anything. They can catch you off guard, but there are so many of them that you get used to it really quickly. There is this one staff bot in the canon finale that did disturb me a bit, but the rest of them to me made the game more frustrating, as it became more difficult to appreciate certain parts of the environment because of their presence, and the number of them made the game feel crowded in terms of threats, which made any appearance of the Glamrock animatronics feel less intense, special, and scary. As for Vanny, I encountered her about 3 or 4 times during my playthrough, and she definitely made me go, oh crap, when she appeared, but because of the reasons I already said and the problems with her usage in the game, she still wasn't good enough for me. Here are some ways in which I think the scare factor can be increased. For the core 3 Glamrock antagonists, I would make them alternate between being friendly and hostile to Gregory in order to maintain tension in the player. This could be Glitchtrap's hold on them, strengthening and weakening as he tries to influence all the things in the pizzeria. Some examples could be playing a game of golf against Monty, and he could occasionally turn creepy and hostile during that game, worrying the player. Maybe if you beat him, that could make him angry, making Gregory leave, and then come back to his boss fight later. You could take a spin on Roxy Raceway with Roxy herself, and then later into the drive, she turns hostile, but her programming prevents her from letting go of the wheel, so she can't attack you. She just creepily stares at you while sitting just beside you. You'd then have to find a way to get out of that situation. Stuff like that would make the animatronics more unpredictable and uneasy to be with. It would also make decommissioning them more tragic, as Gregory would see their normal side. Lastly, making the Glamrocks actively hunt Gregory, rather than patrolling an area, would make them more formidable threats. Chapter 6. Problems with the story. Oh, the story. The part of FNaF that so often gives the most amount of grief. I believe this story is about 25% of what it should be. I don't believe the story in this game is cinematic or upfront enough about what it has to offer, and I believe that is a fault for this game in the context of FNaF. Now, not being cinematic or upfront about a story isn't intrinsically bad. FNaF is notorious for doing just this, but while the earlier games thrived based off of this mindset, as the series has gone on, it has steadily become detrimental to both the perceived cohesiveness of this story and the story's effect/impact. At this point in FNaF, I believe the games, the original and primary source of lore and story, should be more upfront about the story and be cinematic. It should be breathtaking and cool, and not relegate the majority of its meaningful substance out of the way to the difficult-to-access dark corners and cracks of the gameplay experience. And what I mean by cinematic is not necessarily great environments, but to have more cutscenes with substance and more scripted events that have great impacts on the story, not just the gameplay. At this point, FNaF is pretty mainstream, and many fans want the story to take focus. In my opinion, Easter eggs and collectibles should be add-ons to an already robust narrative, not the core of its substance. While Afton's unexplained survival and appearance is a glaring issue, I already talked about that. What I didn't talk about is just as important to the story, and that is, to me, Vanny doesn't have a satisfactory character arc in this. There is an ending when you do confront and manage to free her. However, first, this ending is non-canon, which means it didn't happen with respect to the lore. And second, Vanny also did not struggle with being possessed by Glitch Trap throughout the game. She doesn't progressively battle herself with the idea of killing kids for this entity. She doesn't show any signs that she is a reluctant follower in the canon version of the game. She never helps Gregory survive or escape. She's always unrelentingly hostile. She at least has therapy sessions in the form of CDs, but this is yet another collectible and is by no means unavoidable for the player to find. In my opinion, Vanny/Vanessa also does not have enough scripted screen time, where she encounters, attacks, or otherwise interacts with Gregory, Freddy, or anything else. Remember this cool shot from one of the trailers? Currently, it's not found in the game, and people have torn this game apart, and to my knowledge have not found it. What's worse is that Gregory's overall situation is not explained, and to my knowledge I don't believe it's explained in any of the non-canon endings either. The context behind why he is there, why he distrusts Vanessa at the start of the game, and what happened with Glamrock Freddy at the start is not present. We are left to assume that Gregory snuck in, or it was with a party, or that Vanessa attacked him, or that Freddy glitched out because of Afton or something. To my knowledge, there aren't any proper cutscenes or dialogue to convey this context, if there is any explanation in the game at all. The game could have more story if it added more time for Gregory to spend there. The Pizzaplex closes at midnight, which is a little strange because it's not really a shopping mall, as is used to describe it in shorthand. It's primarily aimed towards children. We could spend more time in the gameplay if the Pizzaplex instead closed at 9 PM, a more reasonable time for children, and that would add 3 more in-game hours to deal with story cinematics and implementing the unpredictability mentioned earlier about the animatronics and Vanessa/Vanny. Overall, there'd be less of a time crunch in the game with regards to the plot. Chapter 7. Missing/cut content. This is a big one. There's a lot of missing content from the trailers that is not currently present in the game. To my knowledge, none of the following has been found to be in the gameplay. First trailer. Vanessa's dialogue to Gregory.
Gregory, your friends are worried about you. They're here with me. Please come out. Gregory, I may have lost my temper earlier, but it was just a glitch. It won't happen again. It's been such a difficult day for all of us. Why don't you come out and we can play a game together? It won't happen again. It was just a glitch.
Freddy's dialogue to Gregory.
Gregory, be still. I think she's found us.
Second trailer. Glitch Trap's dialogue about Vanny.
When I first found you, you were nothing. You were small, pathetic. But now, you are more. Are you ready?
This shot with Vanessa as Gregory goes down an elevator. This shot of Gregory in front of the monitors. This dialogue of Vanessa to Gregory.
Gregory, we can get you out of here. You and me together.
Which heavily implies that Vanessa had a completely different role in the story originally, and was actually supposed to protect Gregory from something, probably the glitching animatronics. Vanessa's line that they won't stop hunting Gregory.
They won't stop hunting you. None of them will stop hunting you.
This line from Vanessa.
We have to get you out by morning.
This aggressive line from someone, probably Monty.
You will do as I say. You will bring me what I want. And if you fail me, then you will, both of you, burn!
The UI for the watch is also very different, with actual time on it. There's also this part with Vanny, which could have just been cinematic, but still isn't present. Also, this line from Vanessa wasn't in the game too.
There is more going on here than you realize.
Third trailer. This shot with Vanessa is nearly the same as the one in game, but Vanessa doesn't look angry at Gregory, possibly hinting that she was still going to be helping Gregory at this point. And this incredible shot of Vanny.
Given novelty glasses, a voucher for 1 free soda refill, and where you will sign a legal disclaimer releasing us of all liability for anything that might have happened during your visit. Have an awesome night, and we'll see you again soon.
Where did all of this stuff go? The trailers promoted Vanny way more than she was promoted in the game. So much stuff that was interesting was cut. I do not understand why these things were, but it does mean that a big portion of the content in these trailers are obsolete. Therefore, it makes some of the marketing for this game misleading. I had to rewatch these trailers, and somehow I still got excited by them, even though the game is out now, and I know what happens. It goes to show that these trailers were good, and managed to capture the right atmosphere, but I believe the game itself just did not deliver on that. Chapter 8. Bugs/glitches/optimization. We are down to more trivial, yet still important problems with this game. I say trivial because these are things such as bug fixes and optimizations, things that ought to be fixed for a better playing experience, or a playable experience at all, but aren't intended to be in the game in the first place. These are just technical issues, and while they can be serious, I believe that the actual design and mindset issues with this game are more dangerous and problematic as a whole for FNaF moving forward. Chapter 9. Comparing this game to the previous titles. Overall, these are the reasons why I believe Security Breach is the weakest FNaF game. I don't mean that it's a bad game, far from it, only that it is currently the one addition to the franchise with the least story impact, while simultaneously being the one with the most design problems. Think about it. In the canon ending, Afton is revealed, but for so long now, we've already had the idea that he would be revealed in Security Breach. Glitchtrap was proof that William was gonna come back in some shape or form. How he is alive isn't explained, and in the end, he just gets taken away by the molten blob thing, being perhaps his most "he's definitely not dead" ending yet. Vanny or Vanessa isn't even present in the canon ending, which baffles me as she was built up to be important by the trailers. You might say that this game introduced the fact that Fazbear Entertainment was back, but we already knew that from Help Wanted. One of the things that the game does right is Gregory and Freddy. They successfully managed to make them have an emotional bond, which is fantastic. This game is not bad, it's just not strong. Each of the previous FNaF titles, excluding Special Delivery, are stronger than Security Breach in impact and design. And lastly, do I need to bring up this? What does this even mean? I believe we all thought it was relevant to Security Breach, but the FNaF 4 box? To my knowledge, nothing in this game about it. Chapter 10. What will happen with FNaF? To my knowledge, Security Breach did not add anything new to the lore that we didn't already anticipate coming into it. It did very little to twist the story or to add any new meaning to it. I worry that Security Breach is a big warning sign that FNaF could go down a road of being a shell of its former self. It's not yet at that point, and I don't believe Security Breach is soulless. The game definitely has a spirit and a soul to it that gives it its own unique identity. However, I still believe it is a very weak installment for FNaF, and that's worrying after waiting for so long for it to complete, and I'm going to resume working on that long-standing FNaF fan game I talked about. See you around.